Welcome to Podcast of the Caribbean, a special rewatch miniseries from The Least Important Things, where we set sail to discover the legend and legacy of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing so good, Luke. I'm going to be honest. I'm super excited to discuss this one with you. I just watched yesterday, so I'm all.
Oh,
prepped.
you're fresh. You're ready to go.
I'm super fresh. I am so prepped. This epic battle between Spain and England. I'm just super excited to dig into this. I'll be honest. I was super excited in the beginning. About 2/3 of the way through, I kind of got a little sleepy and fell off.
Yeah.
But at the end, when Spain scored their second goal, it was crazy, and I was super excited.
Mike, goal? You mean like when Spain took over the?
Yeah.
What you mean, like the Spanish sailors came at the Fountain of Youth and they took it over and destroyed it? Is that what you mean?
No. Oh, are we not here to talk about Spain versus England, though?
Yeah, Spain versus England. Yeah, a battle for the Fountain of Youth. A race, you would say. A
The
race
Fountain of
across
Youth.
the seas.
Because you're saying because there were a lot of old players, like there's a couple players on Spain who are announcing their retirement.
No, I'm talking about Pirates of the Caribbean. This is Podcast of the Caribbean. It's a podcast about the film series. No? Oh, you're not prepared. Oh, sorry, listeners.
I totally thought that we were supposed to be talking about the Euro final.
No, it's very similar. In some ways, you could say the battle between those two countries.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's the thing. I feel like I'm still prepared. So let's see how this goes. Maybe I did the right homework.
You know what? In some ways, there's a lot of comparisons because just like England, at one point, they claimed glory for the country and were waving their flag and felt victorious and then got shot in the chest by a musket from the Spanish legions. So it's a very similar contrast between the two. If you haven't joined us, this is not a soccer podcast. It might turn into a soccer podcast. This is Podcast of the Caribbean. If you haven't listened to our first 3 episodes, go back and listen to those because we cover all the first 3 films of this franchise, going deep behind the scenes, talking about what's worked, what hasn't worked, and the legacy of this franchise. But today we're talking about the 4th installment, Pirates of the Caribbean: On Stranger Tides. On Stranger Tides, not the Euro final. Mike, and just like this iteration of the franchise, we've stripped it back a little bit. We've gone simple. It's just you and I today. No guests. We're keeping it simple, just like the filmmakers did. So it's going to be more of an intimate storyline on this episode today.
They made it simple.
You know what, Mike? Let me tell you this up front. I really enjoyed this movie. I actually liked it a lot.
Okay.
So this is going to be an interesting conversation. I actually enjoyed it. It was not a burden for me to watch this movie, and we'll get into the reasons why. But first, Mike, we have some breaking Pirates of the Caribbean news. And when I say breaking, I mean we're talking about it in the same month that this news came out, which is breaking here. If you've listened to any of our episodes, we don't break news. We're lovers, not experts, to quote James Bonding. But this is really breaking news within the last couple of weeks. Jerry Bruckheimer has told reporters that there's going to be 2 movies potentially to reboot the franchise, to reboot Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, here's the catch. He's going to write them or be part of the writing process and producing them, of course, but also maybe directing them. That we're not quite sure, but they're in development. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that Disney has greenlit them. We have not gotten confirmation that Disney's greenlit them. The quote from him is, "We have a script that's being written right now. Hopefully it'll come in a month or so, and it'll be as good as I think it will be. So let's hope Disney likes it and they give us an opportunity to make it," unquote. That's Jerry Bruckheimer, who's produced this entire franchise. Wow. Now, that isn't a lot to go on, and it's definitely not something to be like, yeah, this is going to happen.
Do we know the name of the writer?
We don't know. It's just Jerry right now that's out there up front. So it's just him holding down this like flag, this pirate flag. But potentially, here's a couple of rumors, not totally official, but there's rumblings that Margot Robbie could produce a spinoff. That's a potential.
Wow.
Number 2 is Johnny Depp has not been confirmed to be in these spinoffs or reboots at all. But in place of Depp, as far as star power, obviously Margot Robbie, huge, especially if she's a part of it.
Never heard of her.
Never heard of her. Would be Austin Butler. Austin Butler of Dune, of Elvis, of the Bike Riders fame. He's obviously promoting this movie, and people have asked that there's rumors that he might come into the franchise. He quote says, "Oh, really? I haven't heard about that," which is what they always say. I love Pirates of the Caribbean. That just reminded me of when I was a kid in elementary school. We had to make these posters that you had like your favorite music, your favorite actors, and he put Pirates of the Caribbean on there. But again, we don't know. That would be crazy if that happened, but big stars attached to potential 2 new movies. So Margot Robbie, Austin Butler, who knows? Now, we don't know. Could Austin Butler play Jack Sparrow? Is that possible? I don't know. So, crazy news. How do you, like, all seriousness, how do you feel about this, that we could potentially getting some new Pirates of the Caribbean movies?
I mean, like, that's exciting. I like the franchise, and I'd buy tickets to see that. I think that there's a lot of lessons that they can learn from the 5 movies of Foundation that they have, and what worked and what didn't. And we can talk about what worked and what didn't in this movie, and how that might help writers and producers and directors and actors, and in a reboot. I think a reboot of Pirates would actually be okay. There's been some time past. I think people still like pirates, more specifically, like the idea of pirates, not like pirates necessarily this franchise, but like pirates as a concept and as like a theming for something, for a movie or for a world, I think is really neat. And I actually have a plot, like a formation of a plot idea that I think would be good. You saw, or were introduced to pirates actually being pirates, like laying siege to a city or a harbor, and then like they get caught up in the local politics of that area, and then end up having to defend it against a different siege of other pirates or something like that.
I like that, because we do get that in the first film. Another thing I wanted to bring up since we last recorded, and thank you, listeners, it's been a minute because life in the high seas. I listened to a great podcast. It's called Empire. It focuses on different empires, but it starts out and talks about the British Empire in India. But they go in deep into the East India Trading Company, which features heavily in the first couple films. Beckett, of course, is part of the East India Trading Company. And we talked about on the pod that I was confused of like how much like power did these have? They were able to essentially call in the British Armada. Man, when you learn about the East India Trading Company, they are definitely bad dudes, like worse than they're portrayed in Pirates of the Caribbean. They essentially, it was the way the podcast describes it is if Jeff Bezos had an army. That's how the East India Trading Company was.
He does. Yeah, it's an army of package truck drivers.
If you equip them with sabers and muskets, that's essentially.
Because what is a package truck other than a ship?
That's true, a vessel.
Yes.
To get to hear from there. I mean, we don't. There's got to be Amazon boats eventually. Let's just get Amazon pirate ships to go to different parts of the world. But I think that idea, coupled with they could go deeper into the East India Trading Company, I think is a great idea. There's so much potential. The big question, and we've talked about this in our franchises, Podcast Impossible specifically, can you continue a franchise like this without the lead character, i.e. Jack Sparrow? Is it a Pirates movie without Jack Sparrow? Obviously, we've seen a lot of iterations, Star Wars, different franchises that have spin-off films. Can they do it? Will it feel like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie? I don't know. I think they can do it. There's a lot of potential because I think the ceiling is low and high at different phases of this franchise, and each iteration can work out. So it's exciting. We will keep you posted as much as we can, meaning when we feel like it, when there's news to talk about stuff. So, Mike, before we get into our discussion, we had a listener leave a voicemail. You can do that at leastimportantthings.com, and there's a leave a voicemail button. You can also reach out on Instagram at Luke H. Ferris, TikTok at Least Important Things, or email the show, leastimportantthings@gmail.com. A friend of the show, Tucker, left an audio message. Now, he left this after the first episode, but I thought that I'd play this because I think it fits in well. He saw something. He was on his way. He's a coach, a volleyball coach for a school here in the Midwest, and he was on a recruiting trip, and on the way to the airport, he saw something, and I'll just play the clip.
Luke, I'm listening to your podcast, the first episode from the Pirates, and I'm like driving. I got to get on a plane to go to Atlanta today because I'm recruiting tomorrow and Saturday. But I'm driving to the airport. I'm annoyed at this 25-year-old truck in front of me that's not driving fast enough. Again, listening to your podcast, and what do you think his license plate says? Tortuga. And I thought, you know what? It's going to be a good day. It's not a big deal that he's not driving fast enough, or she, don't really know. Because I'm listening to the podcast. It's very good. By the way, I do like the first Pirates. I love that movie. I didn't respond, and I feel bad because there are a lot of great scenes in that movie that I like. I didn't love 2 and 3. It was funny you guys were talking about that, but I may have to go back and watch 4 now because it sounds like they did a better job. But I do love 1. I love it, love it, love it. But this dude's truck's license plate says Tortuga. That's crazy. Hope you're having a great day, sir.
Thank you, Tucker. Tortuga. See, if Bezos has a truck that has Tortuga on it, then we know something's going on. Thank you, Tucker, for sharing that. I thought that was a good tee off into the 4th film because I think a lot of people, like yours truly, never saw this movie in theaters, has not seen this movie. I think a lot of people were done after the 3rd movie, and that's where the conversation begins.
Quick geography lesson, Luke. Where is Tortuga?
I feel like it is some little island in the Caribbean. Like it's like, or is it in Africa?
No, it's in the Caribbean. It's called Pirates of the Caribbean. But come on, can you be more specific? What country in the Caribbean is it?
Oh, okay. It's a city in a country.
It's a part of a country.
It's a part of a country. Bahamas.
No, it is Haiti.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I should have known that because I've been to Haiti.
Just being somewhere makes you an expert.
Yeah, I mean, I should have. I was looking in the maps and stuff. Before we dive into the beat by beat of this film, Michael, I want to do a Mike Knapp check-in.
Yep.
Did you fall asleep during this film?
I did.
What do you remember at what point?
I do.
3/4 of the way in?
It was about halfway through, or just past halfway, and it was right after. It was not for a very long time, but it was right after they get to where the mermaids are, and it was between meeting the mermaids, because I remember meeting the mermaids. It was like in the fight for the mermaid, because when I woke up, they had the mermaid.
I like how that is one of the most loud and intense
parts,
scenes, and you fell asleep during that. That seems to be a theme. Is like you can just totally fall asleep, as we talked about. Mike, when we were watching John Wick together, fell asleep, which is a movie that is very loud. And
it's not my fault. John Wick is just boring. Okay, I'm just kidding. I actually really enjoyed it.
Oh boy!
I actually really enjoyed it.
Our listenership just dropped huge. Okay, are you ready for some background on Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides?
Never been more ready.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Things. I'm wanting to say Stranger Things.
On Stranger Things.
On Stranger Things. All right, this film was released May 20th, 2011. That weekend, Michael, you could have seen Bridesmaids, Thor, just Thor, the first Thor, Fast Five, or Insidious. Stranger Tides made over $1 billion
Low
globally.
key, that lineup that you just mentioned, legendary.
That is actually, I was thinking that. I was like, this is a solid
Yeah.
lineup of movies.
What,
The first Insidious, Fast Five,
they
Thor,
didn't
and
all come out
Bridesmaids.
on the same weekend.
No,
did they?
not the same weekend, but they were all in theaters.
They were
when
all
you
in
could have
theaters.
seen this film.
I'm not joking when I say that. I think. Can you read those again?
Bridesmaids, Thor, Fast Five, or Insidious.
Okay, so I have seen all 5 of those, which is like honestly that's impressive. If you pick any given movie weekend out of the last 20 or 30 years, you'd be hard pressed to say you've seen more than 2 in any.
That's true.
So to have a weekend where I can confidently say I have seen all 5 of those, and I have seen Fast Five, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Bridesmaids multiple times, that's a legendary movie.
That is true. That's a sleeper weekend or sleeper box office era, 2011. Really strong. Probably one of the strongest, at least in this podcast that we've gone over.
Yep.
Stranger Tides made over $1 billion worldwide, but out of that, just under 250 million in the U.S., Canada, and the budget was 250 million. So this was
you,
one of
China.
this is the turning of the tide where internationally these movies were so big. You think about Disney parks globally, the marketing. This was an era of films, and that's still part of that. But really, we were building up to this global box office era in the 2010s that probably peaked with Endgame, but just continued to grow and grow and grow. And also why you were getting a lot of Transformer sequels. You were getting a lot of these pirate sequels, even though domestically in North America, they did not perform that well. Globally, it made up the difference.
Yeah. This number, the 1 billion, does not account for DVD sales or Blu-ray sales, right?
I don't believe so. I think this is global
So,
lifetime
yeah.
box office. So it's very impressive. Made more than at World's End. Made less than Dead Man's Chest, but still pretty incredible to see. They did scale back this movie a little bit budget-wise. Part of that was changes at Disney, which we'll get to later, and then obviously post-2009, the cost of filmmaking. Here's the crew. We have a new director. This is our first new director in the franchise, Rob Marshall. He directed Annie, Chicago, 9, Memoirs of a Geisha, Into the Woods. More recently, Mary Poppins Returns, and Little Mermaid. You could say this was a prequel to the live-action Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
It was his
probably,
first taste of mermaids, of water. It's very exciting.
It's probably the preeminent reason Disney chose him as the director for The Little Mermaid.
They're
right?
like, this guy, he's got mermaids down.
Yeah, he's got the most mermaid experience of all of our available directors.
Live action mermaids, he's got it. Out of our Rolodex of former Disney directors.
Look up, go open the Rolodex, go under M for mermaid. Rob Marshall's right there.
Rob Marshall. He's ready. He was waiting for that. This was, of course, like we said, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. Same writers, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio return. Same cinematographer, Darius Wolski. Hans returns for music. The stars, of course, Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. Newcomer Penelope Cruz as Angelica. Jeffrey Rush returns as Barbossa. Ian McShane, newcomer, as the notorious Blackbeard. Kevin McNally returns as Gibbs. We have newcomer Sam Claflin. Newcomer Sam Claflin as Philip, a.k.a. Sexy Priest. And then we have Astrid Berger-Frischbe. I just destroyed that French name. I apologize. As Serena. And then Stephen Graham as Scrum. Fun new addition to the crew. All right, ready for some interesting facts that you can fact check? Unlike the 3 preceding the films, which were all shot in the Caribbean, on location, of course, this was shot in Hawaii, which you can definitely tell. A lot of this is on land. A lot of this film is shot on land, probably part of the budgetary reasons, but we're getting a lot of land shots, which I think I like, but we'll talk about that later. Johnny Depp, this is reportedly. Here, I'll do an over-under game with you, Mike. How much do you think Johnny Depp was paid to come back to reprise his role as Jack Sparrow? Over under
No,
30.
don't do that because it's going to be over. Whatever you're saying, you're gonna.
What do you think it is? Just what do you think it is?
I think he was paid $40 million.
Higher.
Wow.
55.5 million reportedly. So if you do the math, the budget was 250 million. So I don't know what the math is on that, but a significant portion of the budget was to bring Johnny Depp back as Jack Sparrow, which makes sense. But the cool thing was he bought new waterproof jackets for 500 crew members to protect them from the cold weather. And he spent $64,000 to do it. So
Yep. Yeah.
I'm a man of the people.
Yeah.
It's literally the least he could do.
He probably wrote it off too.
Yeah. All right, ready for some Disney fun? Some Disney backstory?
I need some.
Okay, you probably might know more about this than I do as a Disney aficionado. After Walt Disney's chairman for 38 years, Dick Cook, was fired, Johnny Depp went publicly and said that he was not as excited for the fourth movie because Cook left the project. Quote, there's a fissure, a crack in my enthusiasm at the moment, Depp said. It was all born in that office. So one of the reasons that he committed in the first place to do this character because he trusted Cook. Cook loved his interpretation. But it seems like the other members of the studio execs were not as excited about the cavalier nature of Jack Sparrow. We think about Disney as a brand, a very conservative brand, not necessarily like political but more conservative. It's a family-focused brand. So very interesting that this was happening at the top at Disney. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Mike, as a Disney.
I don't have
Disney
any thoughts.
dude.
I wasn't aware of that.
Obviously, I said the budget had to be scaled down a little bit in comparison to at World's End because of the economy. Another fun one was Penelope Cruz was pregnant throughout the production, and it wasn't noticeable. And then her sister played her double in wide shots. If at the end of the film, if you remember, she claims that she's pregnant, which she actually was. But in the film, I'm with child, which she was. She was telling the truth as a person, but not as a character.
Pretend that you're pregnant. Oh, wait a second.
Don't pretend that you aren't. That you are trying to. So those are interesting facts that you can fact check.
No wonder the acting in that scene was so bad.
Okay, let's kick off the beat by beat. What are your overall thoughts on this film, Michael?
Negative. It has some bright spots, but I do have some issues with it that really, unfortunately, detract from some of my more positive moments.
Do you remember when you because this is my first time seeing this movie? Do you remember your first reaction? Were you pretty bummed, or were you just kind of like, eh?
I remember after this movie being really disappointed.
Yeah.
And I remember after the third one, I felt okay. After the fourth one, I was like, please don't ever make another movie. Please, 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 please. And then when they announced at World's End, is it at World's End? No, what?
Dead Man Tells No Tale. I had to look that up.
When they announced that one, I was like, please, no, please do not make this. And I will save my reaction for the end of that movie when we get to it. But
a little tease.
So I remember feeling it after having watched this movie, like, this was really disappointing to me.
Yeah, I think it definitely, if you come into this movie expecting this crazy big adventure, this something that you've never seen before, you're going to be disappointed. I think if you come with a low bar, it is surprising. I like it because it's simple. One of the biggest gripes that I've had in the last two films we've covered is just there's too many plot lines, there's too many characters, they're trying to wrap up too much stuff. This felt just like a very simple, fun romp. It felt just like a legendarium of Jack's adventures. It was. I thought the plot was as simple. If we think about, like, I had a little MacGuffin report. If we think about the MacGuffin report for this, basically, they're trying to find the Fountain of Youth. It's very simple, and in order to do that, they need a mermaid's tears. They need the chalices, and that's it. Really, right?
Yep. Yeah.
That's a MacGuffin report. If we compare that to our other movies, it's just so confusing. And guess what? Like you said at the start, Mike, the Spanish are after it, the British are after it, and Jack is after it. / Blackbeard is after it. So they're just all looking for the Fountain of Youth. It's very simple. I enjoy that. And I think there's this really interesting thing that we can follow along in this film that we can bring in from our last episode, just as Jack sober theory. It is very sound in this movie because Jack is intoxicated a lot of this film.
Yeah.
And he acts chaotic once again. So he's not a sound, or it's very much improv versus he's conniving and planning it out. So we'll have to follow that on. All right. Opening up, we have a new Disney Castle logo, which is exciting, where the mermaids jump out. I don't know if you noticed that. It was a nice touch. We have mermaids. We have ships in the river. The Spanish figure out that there's a Fountain of Youth, and that is the cold open. So we have a new country character, the Spanish. They're just like, we're just going to say like this, the Spaniards are our character, which I think is important because we have a Spanish-speaking lead in this film, and then following up, one of the most iconic Spanish actors of all time is coming into the fifth film. And the Spanish were so influential during this era that it makes sense to have them into this film. I'm really excited about it. So we open up Jack Sparrow in London. He is disguised as a judge. Mr. Gibbs is on trial as Jack. I think this is one of my favorite intros to Jack.
This is good.
I think this is up there with, besides the first one, this is high up there for me.
Yeah.
I love this intro. It's great. And I love the being in London. Like, we're finally in London, British Empire London, and we're romping around. We're seeing Jack on land, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I did like this intro too. I thought it was very clever and witty and funny. I know that we're in London and everything. I do think that there are some, what's the right word? Difficulties with like how they end up in London and yada, yada, yada. But it's fun to just think about like, oh, we're in London now. We know that Pirates is global because of the last movie. But yeah, it was neat.
It's fun. Everyone's hamming it up. We're having a lot of fun. Basically, we expect Gibbs and Jack are kind of escaping. We figured out that they don't have the pearl anymore, which I love. I love that it's just like these two are together, and they're pretty much back to zero. And Jack's just trying to figure out how to survive. I think this is the best when we see Jack just kind of alone trying to survive. It's enjoyable for me. They think they get away, and little do they know that they are being brought in front of the king, played by the actor who plays Uncle Vernon in the Harry Potter series. And he's going for it. He's just going for it as King George, I believe. It is. That's why I like this movie, Mike, because they're not afraid to just ham it up. They're having fun. Like Jack Sparrow in front of the king. Of course. I think Jack says, with your permission, your hiney. I mean, it's just
That's such a good line.
It's absolutely insane. And then another good scene is when he's sitting in the chair and he's got the chains and he's trying to hand act or talk like Jack Sparrow does with the hands, but he can't because he's tied together with the chains. I love that. It's just fun. It's fun. It's a fun play with the character. You're putting him in situations that are silly and unique and not historically accurate or just odd, but fun. Then we find out that guess who is joined the side of the Empire? Captain Barbossa. He is gone wig. WHIG. Just kidding. No, Gone Wig, as in he is working for the. Mike, you didn't laugh at my wig joke. That was a British politics joke,
Luke,
and I'm really upset.
I
worked on that.
I'm trying to remember. I'm actually reading. I'm not paying attention to you. Sorry. I'm trying to remember who was supposedly in possession of the pearl at the end of the last movie, because I can't remember if Barbossa.
Sorry, Barbossa had it. Barbossa.
Why?
Had it.
Then what did Elizabeth have? She's Pirate King. What does she have?
This is not. Don't worry, Elizabeth. Remember, we're cutting the fat. We're cutting out things that don't matter. It's just,
okay.
It's to me, this could be before all of that. I mean, it's not, but just like to me, it's just like we don't need to even think about Elizabeth and Will. It's just not.
Yeah. I'm fine with all that. I just was having a difficult time remembering who had the pearl. Because when I was watching this movie, I was like, I thought Elizabeth had the pearl, which wouldn't have helped me make sense of the fact that like Barbossa is the one who lost it. But if Barbossa is the one who ended up as captain of the pearl, then like I'm here, I'm ready to engage in this.
Yeah, and I think they could have helped if the cold open for this one was Barbossa losing the pearl to Blackbeard, because he tells this story, which is great. I like when Jeffrey Rush is acting and telling that story. I think it's very captivating. But if they would have opened, then we establish, Barbossa. It's reminding the audience Barbossa has the pearl, Jack's not there, and it sets up the stakes with Blackbeard. So I think they could have added that, and maybe that's a budgetary thing, like they didn't want to shoot another.
It's 100% a budgetary thing, because it had to be, because that is a really captivating story. Because like Shannon made this point, she said that the pearl,
Shannon, friend of the pod, wife of Mike.
Yeah, friend of the pod, better friend to me. She mentioned that the Pearl, in a lot of ways, is a main character of this franchise.
Yes.
Obviously, we know that Will or Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom did not have contracts for this movie. Neither did the Pearl, for that matter. And
the Pearl's got a great agent, though. The Pearl was like Johnny Depp's getting $55 million. I don't get on set for less than 20.
I just don't think people fully understand like how powerful the shipbuilders union is, and
it's strong.
It's so strong. But anyway, so she made this point, and I think she's right. The Pearl really is a central figure, and so this very chaotic and important event happens, which essentially motivates Jack through the movie. I'm jumping super far ahead.
No, it's okay.
Movie, but like
it's important. It's the motivation of the
rescue
characters.
of the Pearl, and like you can see it in Jack's eyes when he learns from Barbossa that he's lost the Pearl. Like Jack is like this is all that matters to him is the Pearl.
And in Barbossa, it's his motivation. It's revenge for losing the Pearl and losing his leg.
Yeah, but it does seem like a better movie could have been Barbossa losing the Pearl.
Yeah, and it's interesting when he's telling the story later on in the film about how he lost it and how he had to cut his leg off, which I think is a great story. But I think if this film was the third installment of the series, we would have gotten a full flashback and a whole scene there. Like we didn't, which I actually liked. It was nice to just see Jeffrey Rush act, but I think there is something with the budget where we didn't see that, and that's such a key character, as you said, in a key moment to the motivation of Jack and Barbossa are two of our strongest characters in this film. It's a shame, but I'm hoping it'll pay off in the next one. That's how I felt as someone who had not watched this movie.
Okay.
And the way it ended, I got excited.
All right.
But we could have had a little bit more Pearl, but great agent. Gotta give it up for the Pearl.
I do think that like originally, I made a note here as Jack is being recruited by England, right?
Yeah.
That great, so this is just Indiana Jones but pirates.
Yeah.
But I made that note kind of like as a critical note at the time, but honestly I loved that. Like looking back, like that's what I want. Like I'm totally fine if the whole franchise is just Indiana Jones but pirates.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely think the final scene, the Fountain of Youth scene, is so similar to The Last Crusade with the Cup of Christ. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's the same kind of setup where you have, all the characters that are chasing this item, this totem, are all in this small set space. Everyone has to make decisions. Jack does a switcheroo. I know we're jumping to the end, but I think this is where the conversation is going. Jack does the switcheroo. It's drinking the water of life, eternal life. It's very similar to The Last Crusade. That's probably why I liked it in some ways. It just felt very simple. It's almost like the antithesis of The Last Crusade, because I think that's is more about a father and son reuniting, and this is more about son or a daughter and father, and showing that the father is a piece of trash.
So Jack escapes, attempts to escape, or really he's just trying to figure out who's impersonating him somewhere in London.
But we also get a lot of good balance fighting. Balance fighting is back, baby. I mean, we're getting, he's on drapes. It's fun. He's chasing. It's everything you love in a Pirates movie. Also, Barbossa's makeup is amazing. It's just there's so much good stuff.
So I wrote a note here that Jack being chased through London and everything that ensues there, it had the spirit of a Rube Goldberg device.
Yes.
And that was so much fun. Just watching what does the next move of Jack what does it instigate? What is that?
Yeah.
What does that instigate next?
Everything that Jack does leads to another trap.
Yes.
A mechanism that leads to another mechanism to get him out. It's so fun. It's what we love about I think this is what we love about the franchise. We think about the opening 30 minutes of the first film, and when he rescues Elizabeth is on the dock, and the way he gets out. You think about the commandeering of the boats. It's all this building upon machine that all has it's moving forward, and that's why I like this movie. It kind of moves forward. We get action scenes right away. We also do get, Mike, that we have to bring up, we do get a Dame Judi Dench cameo in the carriage.
I missed this. Where did I? Yeah.
Crazy. Was she just available?
Yeah.
I hope she got paid.
I think she was actually this was shot on location in London.
Yeah.
And she was just traveling home from lunch, and it was just this wasn't
this was on set. She's traveling home from probably shooting Skyfall.
She's doing.
And,
exactly.
This is how Dame Judi Dench normally lives.
Normally travels. Yeah.
This is how she dresses. She comes home in a carriage. That's how I imagine it.
Yeah.
For tea time.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp in full makeup just jumped in.
Yep.
Oh man, it was a fun cameo. I mean, I hope she got paid because it was beautiful. Then Jack finds what is the bar called? Oh, I'm trying to remember. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, it was in London, so it's got to be something and something. It's got to be noun and noun, like crown and king, or.
Oh yeah, the captain's daughter. Okay. Because remember, he's hanging onto the sign right in her.
Oh yes,
breasts.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. It's nothing like a good middle school boy joke. They're still holding on Pirates, but that's the pirate bar, which I get. It's nice. It's a different version of Tortuga. It's a little bit more Star Wars Cantina bar, but we do see Jack's dad officially in the film. He says hello, Dad. So even though it's implied at World's End, but that is his father.
Yeah.
Keith Richards playing his dad, which is cool. I like his character better in this one because he feels more of this Yoda-like figure, kind of coming in and coming out.
I'm agnostic to his appearance in this film.
He does have a great line, and he says, Jack asks him about where the Fountain of Youth is, and he says, Does this face look like it's been to the Fountain of Youth? Yeah. And then Jack says, depends on the light.
Yeah, that's good. That was good.
So the mystery is this Jack Sparrow is getting a crew together, and we learned that from Gibbs, and it's Jack's I'm not getting a crew together. There's this mysterious fake Jack Sparrow, which I think probably helps his appearance fees, right? Because multiple Jacks.
Yeah, the Jack versus Jack showdown is really just a double appearance fee.
It's a double appearance. He gets paid. Also, another great sword fight. It reminds me of Jack and Will in a confined space, balancing, jumping. But this time they're in the storehouse with the wine, and we find out that Penelope Cruz who plays Angelica is pretending to be Jack, which she does a great job mimicking him and doing all the Jack things, and the makeup's great too.
Yeah.
So. What did you think about bringing in someone like Penelope Cruz, huge renowned actor, a lot of star power?
Yep. Yeah. Tokenism. We need a woman for this film. This is not a slight on Penelope Cruz in any way. This is just, we need a woman. Where can we shoehorn a woman into this plot? And also, like, make fun of Jack at the same time. So, like, let's get a woman to pretend to be Jack and we can make a joke out of it. Like, I couldn't have passed for any other pirate.
Definitely. This franchise has run into that, and we've talked about that with Keira Knightley. It feels forced. However, I think she's strong enough that she carries the load. I think where this film lacks is making her Blackbeard's daughter. That felt forced. Why couldn't we just have her just be independent pirate? It felt like as soon as we found that out, the character kind of fizzled out for me.
Maybe.
I think it would have been better if she was independent, or like she claims that she's pretending to be his daughter. To me, that makes more sense. And we never really get 100% confirmation, so maybe she was, but it would have been nice to have her have a little bit more independence. I mean, the line is funny. I always wanted to do that when he kisses himself. So, and they do go after Jack. We have some good jabs throughout the film, and there's an implied backstory and love story. But anyways, again, the British come. They're trying to get Jack. All the soldiers come and they jump into the water. How dirty was the Thames back then, do you think?
Very, very, very.
Can you imagine?
Dirty. The dirtiest maybe it's ever been.
Probably. Oh, really, really rough. I'm just getting the cast.
So what was her reasoning again for why she was there and needed to be dressed up like?
She's trying to find the fountain of youth. Yeah. Yes, she is. She's trying to find the fountain of youth, and I think she's using Jack to either draw Jack out by pretending to be Jack, or to build a serious crew because she can't get a ship as a woman.
But she already is on a ship.
Yeah, that's right. I guess she does have a ship already, but only because she was pretending to be Jack.
No.
Oh no, the ship is Blackbeard's.
She's the first mate on the Queen Anne's
Oh
Revenge.
yeah. Okay.
So that's, I guess, something I'm a little bit confused on. This, when we talk about her being shoehorned into this film, it kind of feels like her existence in London to connect the beginning of the film to where Jack is, to getting him to Blackbeard, or connecting these dots is shoehorned, because I don't understand why if she's the first mate on Blackbeard's ship, why can't she recruit a crew on her own merit?
Yeah, it feels like that's more of a gimmick.
Now, if it were that she was trying to draw Jack out, I could buy that. Like if she had some information.
Yeah, but it wasn't her
Jack
intention.
has this map, right?
Or
But
was
she
that
didn't
the
know
motivation to get the map from Jack?
I don't think she knew.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch. We do get to meet the character Scrum, played by Stephen Graham, who's a great British actor, and I believe he's in Snatch, and he I guess he was our musical portion of the Rob Marshall's iteration.
Good point. Yes, you're right. There was a musical number.
There was a musical number, so he was the music of this film.
Audience, if you're not familiar, Rob Marshall, famous mostly for his directing of Chicago, and I guess The Little Mermaid.
And Into the Woods.
Into the Woods, yep. He did a Tony Bennett movie.
Yes. So he's a musical man.
Yep.
Here,
He's a poor man's Damien Chazelle.
so Gibbs is captured by the British Empire. I thought it was a nice touch. We have the 2 returning expendable British crewmen from the first film, where the guy has the famous line is, "That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen." They are joining Barbossa, so they're like his main crew members. So they have Gibbs, and Gibbs has the map because Gibbs stole the map from Jack, which I like. Gibbs.
Well, so how did he get the map? Because
Jack had the map.
But Jack had the map. But because Jack had the map, did Gibbs say map, and then the map came out, and then sang a song, "I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map." I'm the map.
On the map. We could have used that section. Actually, it would have been nice to help clarify things if he just came out and just like kind of like, so this is what's happening in the movie. We could have used him. We could have used Dora as well. If we got into the jungle. She would have been great.
You know, I don't know. Is Dora Spanish or Mexican?
That's a good question.
She would fit in. If she was Spanish, she would fit into this very
I guess
well.
Penelope Cruz is Dora. That might be a little racist comment.
Ooh.
We'll cut that out.
No, because Penelope Cruz is Spanish, and if we
Yes.
think Dora is Mexican,
Anyways. So now we have our team. We have the Spanish.
there is a monkey.
Yes.
There is a monkey.
There is a monkey in Dora the Explorer, which the monkey does make an appearance to my chagrin in the Little Bottle collection. We find out that Angelica is actually the first mate of her dad's, sort of, we don't know dad's boat, who is Blackbeard, played by Ian McShane. Jack doesn't even believe that Blackbeard's on the boat.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that were weird. I think there was apparently like the crew is zombified.
The
I don't know.
officers are.
The officers are, which was something they just were like,
They just like mentioned and then moved on.
they didn't need to do that.
It was the first introduction. I think okay, so did you notice in the credits, after the writing credits, it showed that this movie was suggested by a book idea.
I did see that.
So the book, I've done like very little research on this. Okay, the book was written in 1987 or published in 1987, and is about like a lot of the things that this movie is about. So the large plot points and devices in this movie are kind of from the book, like the whole Fountain of Youth and the whole scavenger hunt for the different items and things like that. Very booky. And in that book, it also like a portion of the book, like Blackbeard is in the book, and he's like got like some voodoo vibes. He does some voodoo, and we see him do some voodoo later on, which is never really explained, like why he's into voodoo. But the mention of the officers on the ship being zombified is
that makes sense with the voodoo
mention of the voodoo.
Yeah, and that makes sense because zombies, if you didn't know, listeners, zombies as a pop culture character or form, actually it's traced to voodooism in Haiti and that culture. Tortuga. See, it's connected. That makes sense, actually, when you explain it, but it's not explained in the movie, and it seems
really
unnecessary. Also, the remote control ship, not really explained. I don't think we needed that.
Ship.
Where the sword can,
So
if you take that out of the movie, it's still great because Ian McShane is a scary enough and powerful enough actor as Blackbeard where we do not need to give him these extra superpowers.
I've got a few points around this that I would like to discuss. So Jack has an item. Let's call them legendary items, okay? These items that exist.
Jack's items.
That exist
we love his
items. These legendary items that exist in this pirate world, like the compass, whoever holds it gets to, like, it points to whatever to what they truly want, and we learn that like Blackbeard's sword controls the winds essentially.
Yes.
And I think it would have been a lot better explained that so Jack, when Jack is told that he's on Blackbeard's ship, I forget exactly what he says, where he says, Blackbeard, you mean the pirate that all pirates fear? And then he says something else. And I think what they should have done is adjusted that line to say, the controller of the east winds or something like that.
Yes.
And I think that would have done so much to explain that sword and why that sword is so powerful. Because I have an issue connecting this movie to the last movie, where we learn in the last movie that there's all these pirate lords and they're scattered across the world. And yet you have Davy Jones and Blackbeard who have some legendary status or legendary item or some sort of mystical power over the sea, and they're not pirate lords. And that is really frustrating to me because, like, if Blackbeard is the pirate that all pirates fear and he has this sword that can control the winds, which is the reason why he's able to capture these ships and like hold them as prizes, which we later learn he's got like a whole closet of like basically like trophies of ships. It's like, why was he not a pirate lord?
Yeah, from a rewatch standpoint, you're right. Now that I think about it, does not help because it makes no sense. What they could have easily done is done a little backstory of after, the Council of the Pirates and the defeat of Davy Jones and blah, blah, there was a power vacuum and Blackbeard emerged from that and took, because that makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like there would have even been, I guess I would have bought a plot line that, or like not a plot line, but like an explanation, let's say, that like Jack is afraid that he's on Blackbeard's boat, not only because he's Blackbeard and the pirate that all pirates fear, but if there was some sort of betrayal or some sort of crossing that had happened in the past that would have led to Jack having a seat in the Pirate Lordship Council and Blackbeard not having a seat there.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have that. It's hard to, from a rewatch standpoint, to go from this huge world building to this with no context.
Yeah.
It's almost like this should have been a prequel, right?
Yeah, I do feel like in some ways, like you mentioned, this, like when I brought up, like, how come, like who had the pearl? I thought Elizabeth had the pearl, blah, 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 blah. And you said that doesn't matter. It's almost as like all of that never happened. I agree.
That's true.
I think you really could have set this as a prequel and everything would have been fine because we know that when we first meet Jack in the first movie, that he doesn't have the pearl. And so there could have been, it could have all fit together that like Barbossa had the pearl.
Yeah. Or Barbossa the Pearl was a British ship, a British privateering ship that Barbossa was on, and that Jack. Yeah, it's surprising they didn't do that because it wouldn't have been crazy. You wouldn't have had to do crazy de-aging or anything.
And it would have fit better also with like the supposed love story that he had with Penelope.
Right.
It would have there's so much that this movie could have benefited from if you just shift the timeline 3 years.
Yeah, because you could add Gibbs still too.
Yeah, you could have Gibbs because they obviously had a history when they first meet in Curse of the Black Pearl. You know that they're.
And Gibbs was working. He was a British sailor before he became a pirate. But you could have done all that.
Yeah.
He could have been on the same. He could have been on the Black Pearl because Gibbs loves the Black Pearl just as much as Barbossa and Sparrow. So he could have been.
And this
also,
and now that we're just kind of like walking through this, I'm just kind of even thinking of even better ways to improve this. Like if you do shift this movie to the beginning, you could assume that Blackbeard is a pirate lord, and that and that he dies, right? And the Jack assumes, and maybe that's how Barbossa gets on to become
Yeah,
a
the
pirate
council,
lord because
yeah,
he takes over the Queen Anne's Revenge, and Jack ends up walking away with the Pearl and all these other ships. So there can be some sort of link to like Jack's power and influence stretching in the Pirate Kingdom. I'm willing to actually, like, you know, we talk about with the Star Wars movies, there's a machete way to like watch these movies. I'm getting pretty close to saying that there's a machete way to watch Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's that On Stranger Tides is the first movie in the series.
I like that theory. It is odd that they didn't do that, that they didn't go back, and you could have done the whole, you could have Rogue One it and done how Jack loses the pearl. You could have done so many things. It's really strange, or Tides, that they didn't. I really like what we just built there.
Yeah, I do too. I mean,
movie.
obviously
I think
you have to give Barbossa his leg back, but that's such like it's so easy to do with this. I'm there already. I'm
there. So viewers, this will forever be known in our canon to rewatch this as a prequel, not post at World's End. I totally agree. Look at us go. I honestly think part of that is just to do a prequel. You have to be. I'm not trying to. This show is not about bashing people who make movies, because movies are really hard to make. But honestly, from a big budget studio movie, if you do a prequel, there's so much you have to follow and that's what they struggled with the whole trilogy. Is they had all these strings and loose ends to try to connect, and they didn't do that very well. So I get we're doing a prequel. They're like, we don't even want to.
Honestly, they made a better prequel by trying to make a sequel.
Yeah,
by having by giving themselves the freedom to say we're just making a sequel. They actually made a better prequel.
Yeah, that's so true. Wow. Wisdom. Okay, so let's speed through here because we just made a new movie, which is pretty classic of us. So, you know, Barbossa I love Barbossa on his boat. I like him drinking rum in the tea. I really like Barbossa's character arc because we get to see him trying to be normal, and I really appreciate that.
I think he's just trying. I think he has. I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but he has reached not absolution, but he knows what his absolution is, and so he's lost everything else that he like cares about. He has one primary motivating and focus, and he knows what he needs to do, and he's now selling off pieces of himself. Like Barbossa's a pirate. He would never be aligned with the British, but he saw the easiest avenue to get what he needed for his absolution was to do it this way.
Yeah, which is great. I think it's a great way to have a character, and he's fun. Every scene he's in is better, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I did enjoy Jack once again showing his charisma and trying to start a mutiny on on Blackbeard's boat because no one's seen him. But of course, Blackbeard is on the boat, and we get to see Ian McShane, who I love and adore. Ian McShane, I thought he was great in this. I think the plot didn't help him.
Yeah,
the plot didn't help him, and some of the things we just talked about didn't help him. But essentially, Blackbeard and Blackbeard's daughter are using Jack to get the Fountain of Youth. Yeah. And then there's a sexy priest, that is thrown into the plot. And oh boy, it's definitely the weakest part of the movie. I get it. It's a studio movie. Sam Claflin is a good actor. He's a heartthrob guy. He's been in a decent amount of British rom-coms.
I do think that his audition for some of the rom-coms that he was in after this movie, you know, he submitted this as his portfolio.
He's like, look at me, I'm giving everything in this movie with what I was given. I'm doing my best, and it just doesn't make sense. Basically, they have a priest on board and it's part of this another kind of this idea of Blackbeard's trying to save his soul. You know, he's damned. No one really cares. We just want to see Jack and Angelica flirt and have fun, which I think is great. They do have good chemistry, and both actors have worked together before, and it definitely shows. So the thing they need to do to get the Fountain of Youth is they have to steal a tear from a mermaid. One of my favorite sequences, I know Mike fell asleep in this, but the capturing of the mermaids,
good,
I love the mermaid design. I love how they're ferocious and scary. A lot of people die. I think it was really well done. Definitely one of my favorite scenes is when obviously we have Blackbeard's crew. Most of them get attacked, and they are able to capture a mermaid, and then Barbossa's crew comes later. They're on land, and you see in the background the British ship just be destroyed by the mermaid. Obviously, they're very angry because Blackbeard's boat just came through. I think it's fantastic. It was one of my favorite.
I missed that. That's the part I missed.
You missed that. It was just like the full takedown. It was like in Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. When the Oathbreakers come through in the Battle of Minas Tirith and just take over one of the elephants. It was very similar. I really enjoyed it.
The what was it? Okay, I don't know. I thought I had a note there and I didn't.
It's okay. Some good lines that I like. Angelica says to Jack, "You can be so charming when you want something. The trouble is finding what you want." I think that's a well-written line of Jack's character. We did also learn about the Black Pearl in the bottles, the ship bottles. That's dumb.
Yeah, I know.
It's just dumb. It's just dumb. I think it's just a way to be able to bring the Black Pearl back. You lied to me by telling the truth, which I really appreciate.
That is a very good line. Like that's good dialogue there.
Yeah, I thought the dialogue was actually better in this movie than the past two in a lot of ways. Some of the plot stuff that we've talked about was not great, but the dialogue was good. Especially, I thought Angelica and Jack's banter was solid throughout.
Yep.
So basically, they have the mermaid in the tank, which is it's just hilarious, and they need her tears. So they bring her along on foot. This is where we get a lot of on foot action. The cliff scene is really long and weird about like jumping off the cliff, not jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
That was weird. It's just
I
to
didn't
get
understand it.
Yeah,
it's more voodoo.
It's just to get the voodoo stuff's weird. Because obviously it's cemented in that Caribbean culture, but they don't really address it in any way or give it any like respect that it deserves.
Yeah.
And you don't have Tia Dalma there. I feel like that you could have brought Tia Dalma back in part of this, like we talked about being a reboot. Like, why isn't she a part of this? Like, she is kind of like part of the voodoo culture there.
I don't know how you would fit her because like she's not exactly a pirate. So like, I know there was a lot of land shots, but like this movie is all about going to a specific place. It's not about.
Which I appreciate it. I think it's good that way. So maybe
but I understand what you're saying.
It would have been nice to have a little bit more like the voodoo. If you're going to bring in the voodoo stuff with the voodoo doll, which I think is interesting and part of this pirate culture, I think you need to explain it a little bit more. Give it the justice it's deserved, not just kind of use it as a magical MacGuffin.
Did the tear for the mermaid tear thing? I think I fell asleep. How did Barbossa get his tear?
When they because they come after the big battle with the mermaids.
Yeah.
And one of them is dying, and he collects one.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
Because I was thinking, I think a way to have avoided the weird romantic comedy that we had in the middle of this movie was to change, and I don't know what the mythology of
mermaids
Ponce de Leon's
like
the ritual or whatever. I don't know what the myth ritual is in the book or whatever, but I think it would have been easier just to be like, we need a scale from a mermaid, so that instead of them having to carry a mermaid all the way through this and like have this like weird sexual tension between these two characters that have nothing to do with the movie, and like because it seems like the only reason that exists is to have the mermaid cry.
Yeah, I think they could have done that because there's a connection between Angelica and the mermaid, and like a classic like does not pass the Bechdel test, but these movies aren't trying to be that, but
no.
she has empathy. There's a connection there that they try to write. Like her character's like, I don't think we should kill. She feels uncomfortable the whole time about her dad, which goes back to that. Like it all is connected. It doesn't really work. Like she likes her dad. She doesn't like her dad, but we could have taken the hot priest out of it and had that shown more of Angelica's conflict, her conflict of her dad versus Jack versus like, we shouldn't be torturing this creature, this feminine creature. And I think you could have kept it because I like the mermaid aspect where like the mermaid is the one that actually has the real power. It's not.
Well, then I don't, trust me, I'm not an expert on mermaids, okay? But like she falls out of the thing and like loses her fins because she touches land. Shouldn't that be like a non-reversible thing for her? Like,
You know what? We'll have to talk to the mermaid film expert Frank Marshall to get the full
Rob
explanation.
Marshall. Rob Marshall.
Not Frank Marshall. Sorry, Rob
Frank
Marshall.
Isn't Frank Marshall a college basketball coach?
No, Frank Marshall is. They must be. Frank Marshall is a producer for all the Indiana Jones movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, the mermaid stuff. I don't know.
Because like I like and
I
I'll
like
be honest,
mermaids, and I'm proud to admit it. I think they're fun characters.
Nothing against mermaids. Like I'm not a mermaidist, but what I'm trying to say is the mermaid element is not the problem. The problem is how the mermaids are integrated beyond just going to get what is precisely needed. So like you can still have the battle with the mermaid and everything. A mermaid dies, you take the scale, you hightail it out of there, and you sail. Like you can still have that, but there's no like it just seems it. You know what's a burden? Not carrying the mermaid through the jungle, making me watch you carry the mermaid through the jungle.
Yes,
because
that
was the frustrating part.
And that's probably the slowest part of the movie. I also like
Yes.
that this is like a very Fox News, MSNBC, like just like we need a little banner under here that's just like it's like mermaids. Are they a problem? Are they a menace to society?
We need more. We need more legislation and policy surrounding mermaids.
We're not talking about it enough.
T's and P's to the mermaids who died in the battle, in the Great Mermaid Battle.
Yeah,
of
the Great
Tortuga.
Mermaid Battle of 1750. Thoughts and prayers go out to the family of mermaids. They were defending their land.
Yes. Yeah, against the aggressors.
The aggressors, yes.
Yeah, the pirate aggressors.
The pirate elite. The pirate elite coming in.
Yes.
How did the Spanish get the cheers?
Oh my gosh.
They probably asked for them.
So, okay, can I be honest about something I think would have improved this movie? And look, we're probably look listeners, you didn't listen to this podcast because you thought you were going to get a short and sweet summary of this movie. You didn't. Okay. So, the Spanish are a central part of this movie, but silently. And I feel like Elizabeth, what's her face?
Angelica.
Angelica's character, or an equivalent character, would have been welcome, like some sort of adversary on the Spanish side, somebody that we can follow on the Spanish side. Like less time with the priest and the mermaid love sequence and more and spend that and take that 15 minutes of screen time and instead translate it to there's some sort of Spanish villain that we don't have to spend a whole lot of
The
time.
Spanish Inquisition.
The Spanish Inquisition, you never expect it. I wasn't expecting that comment. But like I don't know. It would have been nice to get to know one of the Spanish officers.
It would have been nice. We talked about Indiana Jones. So the Last Crusade's great because you have this dynamic. You have Indiana and Ilsa. We think at the start Ilsa is friendly. She's actually working for the Nazis. The Nazis are kind of around. They're always kind of that background villain. We don't really just like the Spanish are here, but we have a double cross that happens with Ilsa that really helps us connect what the Nazis are doing to our main characters, which is Dr. Jones and Dr. Jones. Obviously, it's not for like here, but I think it's exactly what you're saying. Is we need a connection. If you're going to bring in the Spanish, why don't we have a connection there? Why isn't why isn't Angelica working for the Spanish? Like, it is funny in the franchises of double crosses. There's not really a double cross in this movie.
I do think, and like, I feel like the motivation for the Spanish fleet is reasonable enough. Like, you have these committed religious folks who they want to get to the fountain.
It's on brand for the Spanish.
they want to get to the Fountain of Youth, not to exploit it, but to destroy it. And I think that that's enough tension to allow us to have a character there who's reasonably motivated for us to feel like we're racing them. Because to be honest, it doesn't feel like we're racing them at all.
Yeah, we didn't really have a Beckett in this story, which we, at least maybe not everybody does, but we definitely think that's one of the highlights of this franchise is having someone like a Beckett be the face of East India Trading Company. Mm-hmm. And we don't get that because Barbossa is not the face of the British Empire, and his two expendable crewmen do get murdered in the Fountain of Youth cave, unfortunately. So, to catch up, essentially all of our crew, all the different teams end up at the Fountain of Youth. Jack and Barbossa do get captured at one point, and Jack does an incredible getaway on the coconut trees.
I have some plausible deniability for the Spanish here. Yeah, I know you said, where did the Spanish get their tier? They had the chalices. Maybe they hadn't gotten the tier yet, but the chalices are stolen from them by Jack and Barbossa. And so maybe they feel a sense of urgency to forego getting the tier and go straight to the fountain, saying that, if their motivation truly is to destroy and prevent the Fountain of Youth from being used, then they don't care if they get the tier or not. They just need to get.
That makes sense.
I'm willing to accept that for now.
I'm accepting that.
On the subject of stealing the chalices from the Spanish, you never played this game, but people who have played this game will totally get this reference. Like, there's a video game, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is the Assassin's Creed pirate. Basically, Assassin's Creed Pirates. And the mission, I'll call it, for Jack to get these chalices, it plays out exactly like Assassin's Creed. And honestly, like,
wait, does he climb up the palm trees?
No, not quite.
No,
he didn't synchronize at the top.
Okay. No.
But
that feels very Assassin's Creed to be able to climb.
My point being, like, anybody who's played that game remembers how awesome that game was. It really was an awesome game. And so, like, rewatching this movie, it just brought me back. It was just a very fun scene for me because it brought me back to all these awesome memories I have playing this game. And I thought that even though the movie came out well before the game, I just thought it was, like, such a fun way to, like, see pirates be scoundrels. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe that's where we talk about the spinoffs at the start of the episode. That's where they can lean into that more. I do want to mention we did have another ultimate balance fighting battle where Barbossa and Jack, before they get captured, are balancing the entire ship to get the chalices. So, I mean, when we talk about balance in fighting, that's a core attribute of this franchise. And what's more ultimate than actually an entire ship balancing on a cliff? We learned that Barbossa, in one of his leg, is not buried any device or sword to get out of the ropes. It is just rum. And Jack is very excited, like we said. I think Jack's core strength must be very strong because he Tom Cruise Rogue Nation out of that ropes, and it's just incredible. We'd have to get Andy Warson to come in.
I thought about that too. I literally thought that, yes.
If you listen to Podcast Impossible and Rogue Nation, I believe, Tom Cruise does a similar way to get out of being tied around a pole device. And
speaking of which, Andy was supposed to follow up with us, and I think he said that he needed about a year to prepare for that.
That's true. We're coming up on a year, I think, from the
we might be beyond a year
recording. We might have to do a check-in. So, Andy, if you're listening, we need a video for our social media.
The video, yep.
All right, so let's just get to the end of this movie. We are
Which is exactly what I said.
at this point. So they're all at the Fountain of Youth in the cave. I do like this scene. Again, it reminds me of the first movie where kind of we have that finale in the cave with the gold. It's a similar kind of where we have a bunch of group of people fighting. The Spanish come. We have our friend that is waving the British flag valiantly, trying to claim the Fountain of Youth for Britain, and then
In vain.
in vain. And then I love the Spaniard character. Someone make note of that man's bravery. Just so of the time, that's one of my favorite lines. Which I think there was so many good lines in this movie.
The writing was good.
It was well written. It was fun. The Spanish destroy the temple, and basically what happens is Jack's really motivated by Angela. He does really like her. Barbossa kills or stabs Blackbeard with a poisoned blade, which he got from collecting frogs in the woods. His hobby,
Another
his old man
Assassin's
hobby.
Creed reference.
Yes, which I liked. I liked that Barbossa just like did it really quickly. It wasn't like super dramatic.
Yeah.
The Spanish come in, they start causing a distraction, and they kind of kill all the Brits, and then
I
Barbossa's
really
like,
did not expect that.
no, it was quick.
Spanish.
Yeah, oh, yeah, the Spanish. It was unexpected. It was nice though. Again, they had a lot of core elements there.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, you never expect the Spanish Inquisition.
It is so true. Yes. So Barbossa gets revenge, and essentially he just is like, "Hey, I'm in charge. Everybody follow me," and all the pirates as they do. You're like, "Okay, yeah, I guess we do." So then we have Blackbeard, who is dying. Angelica goes to his side and then accidentally grabs and slices her hand on the poisoned sword from Barbossa. So Jack has a decision to make. How is he going to save these folks? What is he going to do? So he grabs the two chalices. He only has one mermaid tear, and he brings it back. And in Jack fashion, he lets them decide. And this is where we see Blackbeard's true colors. He takes the chalice that has the mermaid tear. The other one's going to be essentially kill you. A la Princess Bride almost. Jack does a switcheroo. Unintentionally, intentionally, we'll never know. I think it was intentional.
Inconceivable.
And Blackbeard ends up killing himself. And
I have some questions here. Maybe you can help me understand. So we haven't really criticized well, and I don't want to take a ton of time to get into it, but we haven't really criticized well, like why Jack is so motivated to help here. Because what I feel like we learn at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the previous movie is that the Fountain of Youth, finding the Fountain of Youth is really important to him. And they find it, but then he just starts helping Blackbeard. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
he's drunk, that's why.
He's drunk, okay. So, but then obviously they help Blackbeard, but also the way the fountain is described, did you pick up on this? The way that they describe how the fountain works? Did you
No.
Okay. So the legend is that it's not that you get immortal life, it's that you get the years that the other person would have had.
Oh.
And so like I'm really confused. Like, how much time did what's her face actually get? Because
Angelica,
she only got like maybe an hour. Because the guy's
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
Like, so what is like? Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
I didn't
to me.
catch that, but that seems way too complicated. Like, just make it magic water.
Yeah, just make it magic water. But they took the time to explain in a moment of dialogue that like they explained how the fountain works, and it's like, okay, well then if that's the case, then
If it's too complicated for me, I think it was too complicated for Jack. It is. I think that is.
Jack
another
started
thing.
looking around. He understood how it worked, and he started looking around and went, "There's nobody here that's."
It is hard
long enough."
because the two of the last films were all about Jack's motivation of like, should I become Davy Jones? I want to live eternal, and you would think the motivation would continue, but it's not really motivation for him. It seems he's just kind of along for the ride.
Well, it seems like his mind changes.
Yeah.
Like because he says at the very end, like one of the last lines in the movie is he's explaining to Gibbs why he didn't want to be like basically that the meaning of life is not to be eternal, but like
It's about being present.
It's about the
being
journey.
present.
And
it's about the journey.
yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
It is about the journey, which he does say. So it's just really Jack centering himself and becoming present and one with himself. And it's really about living in the moment. And also he's
So-
like, I discovered it. So, that's,
All this
will
to
be
say
eternal.
is I feel like I'm liking the, as we've been sitting here talking about the movie, I like it more now than I did when I watched it the other night. But there are still moments like this thing that we're talking about with Jack and some of the other stuff with the mermaid. Like there's still just like things that just like stand out as like big glaring weaknesses
Yeah.
of the film.
They tightened it up in a lot of ways. It was better because of that, but then they didn't
They
tighten
give
it up.
themselves enough rope.
Yeah, not enough rope to wrap around. Always got to have some rope. Obviously, Jack uses it very well. Jack is very good at swinging. He's at his best when he's swinging. I think this movie continues
Flailing,
that.
maybe.
And flailing and swinging. So then Jack brings Angelica to a deserted island. I really, really like the line. If you had a sister and a dog, I'd choose the dog. Which is honest. I think it was a good ending to their banter. Like it wasn't this like dramatic love story. Like they're about to kiss and Jack just is like, gotta go.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun. We see Barbossa. He now has a ship. He's got his hat back. Like he's totally back, which I love. He gets that dramatic scene. He's totally back in Pirate World. And guess where he says, a la Tucker to start the episode.
It would have been a good origin
Tortuga.
story for Barbossa's hat too.
It would have been. Yeah, it really is set up to like if the ship was the Black Pearl
Yeah.
instead of it was just Blackbeard's
Now, in
ship.
fairness, like Blackbeard, like his ship in real life was the Queen Anne's Revenge.
Yeah, the Revenge is great, whatever. But yeah, it feels like
but
that
what
could
I'm
have been a
saying
cool
is
moment.
like this movie, we saw Barbossa without this very unique identifying piece of clothing, and at the end, it's given to him. That would have just been a very cool way as a prequel to show that like this is why his hat is so unique. It's so much different than all the other pirates.
Yes.
Later on in the or in the other movies. So like this would have been like a neat way to like
give him
show
that
like
characterization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then
But again, I've already decided that this is the prequel.
Yeah, so
that's
yeah,
exactly
in your head, yeah. It's kind of like the theory that James Bond there's theories that James Bond starts at Casino Royale. It goes Casino Royale,
Well, that's not a theory. That's
Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and then Doctor No. And then
Yeah.
all the way through, and then it's Skyfall.
and if you really want to be, if you really want to get into it, you can just skip Quantum of Solace altogether.
I think it's a good pairing with
Oh,
Casino
gosh.
Royale. It is. If you watch it right after,
It's like you
it
just
makes
took
sense.
what you're saying that if you take one of the best James Bond movies of all time and then pair it with one of the worst James Bond movies of all time, then yeah, it's a good pairing. Well, yeah. If you take an apple and pair it with chocolate, then yeah, of course. But like, come on, Luke.
All right, so you know what? If Quantum of Solace is an apple, I'm taking both of those.
Okay, well, you missed the point. Okay, the point is chocolate is way better, and it's not comparable.
I get it. Okay, Jack deserts Angelica. It's funny. Then when him and Gibbs kind of walk off into the sunset, which I think is a really nice scene, and we find out that in order to get the Black Pearl out of the bottle, which I mean, they obviously don't care in the movie because guess what Jack says? He needs a crossbow, an hourglass, 3 goats. Someone needs to learn the trumpet. And at the same time, someone needs to go, ooh.
Yeah.
If that's not the movie telling you that the bottle thing is stupid, I don't know what is.
Yeah. It was like almost like too much of, I don't know what the right word is. Like that moment from Jack is like he's he's almost playing into it way too much. Like
Yeah, that felt like
it-
almost like Johnny Depp, not
It-
Jack Sparrow.
Exactly. And like the thing about Jack is he's an idiot savant. And like that doesn't fit idiot savant for me.
No, it felt a little bit too self-aware in the movie. We do have a post-credit scene where Angelica is on the island and Jack's voodoo doll washes up shore, which is a funny joke at the end of the movie, but doesn't necessarily set up a new
Also
movie.
would have been a great setup because Jack ends up marooned. So his voodoo doll getting marooned on that island would have been a great setup to be like, this is going to happen to Jack.
It's written itself. This
It's-
is an origin.
it is
in
the-
our
it
mind,
is the
in this
prequel.
podcast, it is canon that this is an origin story
Yes.
movie. It is not a sequel. All right, Mike, we are at the end here. Thank you, listeners, for sticking with us as we essentially rewrite this movie and the entire timeline of the franchise. We have to go into ranking this movie out of 5 Jolly Rogers. Mike, this is what you have ranked the film so far. The first one, you gave it a 5. I also gave it a 5. The second film, you gave it a 2.5, and I gave it a 2.5. Or no, Zach gave it a 2.5. I gave it a 2.5, and you gave it a 3. That's Dead Man's Chest.
Okay.
At World's End, both Jess, you, and me gave it a 2. What do you rate Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides?
So, as the fourth movie in this franchise, I think it's a 1.5. And as the prequel to The Black Pearl, I think it's a 4.
Yes. That's the second time in the road you've given us a scale rating, which I do appreciate.
What do you mean? What do you mean a scale rating?
You said for at World's End, you said the first 2 hours of the movie was a 1, and the final half an hour was a 5, or something like that.
So like, to be honest with the timeline, to me it's a 1.5, pushing a 2. But I really do believe that if you just view it as a prequel, and do like a Podcast of the Caribbean Machete version
Yes.
of this, I do think it's a 4 as a prequel.
Yes. And I will give it a 3. I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed Penelope Cruz, which I didn't say. Penelope Cruz really is the fountain of youth in this film. They're all missing out. She is the fountain of youth. Let's not like be dramatic here. It is true that she's the fountain of youth. So they already found it. They didn't need to look at all. Just need to look at their co-star. But I really liked her. I like the simplicity. I love that we got a lot of Barbossa and Jack together. I like that there was one destination. Cut out the mermaids. Explain the voodoo a little bit more. Make this an origin story. It's an awesome film. It's not up there, but it's closer to the original. I'm excited because I was looking for something different, something that was scaled back, and this delivered. So I think if I saw this movie in the theaters or one-off saw this on an airplane, I probably wouldn't have liked it. But I think in the context of this rewatch, it was really refreshing to go back to basics, to go back to Jack, to tell a more grounded story, to have Barbossa.
Yeah.
Outside of the mermaid, hot priest stuff. By the way, the hot priest becomes a mermaid or merman, I think. That's
Merman.
merman. I think that's probably what happens to them. But no one cares. Doesn't matter. I don't think it's going to matter in this franchise. So that's our ratings. Wow. What a journey we've been on. And it's going to continue because we have upcoming Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. The fifth installment, the fifth and final installment for now, of Podcast of the Caribbean. Mike, what's your wrap up for this episode, for this film? What are you excited for?
I think I didn't think about it when I was watching the movie, but as we talked about it, my appreciation for this movie grew. I realized that there were more things about this movie that I liked than like what I was being critical for the other night, especially if I treat it as a prequel. Like I think, like seriously, if I treat this movie as a prequel, like I really do like it a whole lot more.
We'll talk to you next time for Dead Man Tells No Tales.